Hello and welcome back to All You Can Board. We are counting down our top 50 games of all time, and this is the 20 to 11 range. I'm Carlo, this is Braiden, and that's Dylan. We are excited to count down this part of the list because this is sort of where it gets to, let's say, the cream of the crop. For those who watched the previous videos in the series, we had that 1 minute time limit going. We've scrapped the sort of hard limit on the 1 minute there, but we are still going to have the timer going to sort of keep us on track, and we'll wrap things up sort of in a relatively concise fashion. So one thing I'm going to ask you guys about your 20 to 11, but first I want you to tell me, predict how many games in my 20 to 11 are Reiner Knizia games, and then we'll see at the end. Because I'll just say this is the group of 10 that has the most Knizia games for me on this entire list.
I'll say that in the 20 to 11 you have 5.
I'm going to go 6.
Okay. All right. And now, is there anything special you guys want to highlight about your 20 to 11, or just about how this kind of coincides with the rest of the list?
There's some, I won't say the exact number, but there's a decent amount of new games to the list in this 20 to 11. And I will say that this year it felt especially difficult to determine what was going to be in the 20 to 11 and what was going to be in the 10 to 1 for me. Like not on every spot, but there's a bunch of games in here that as I move things around, at one point or another, I think 5 of these games had just slid into the top 10 and I moved them around a lot. So these are, when you say cream of the crop, a lot of these games, if you ask me in like 2 months, could all of a sudden be top 10 games for me. This is just how I kind of landed on them now based on the plays I've had.
Yeah, it felt very much like a knife fight, even more so than the top 10.
Yeah.
Everyone was scrapping to get even into the top 20 for me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's kind of the same for me, and this is part of the list I would say that had the most movement for me.
Yeah.
Compared to previous years. All right, so do you want to kick it off with your number 20?
I will kick it off with my number 20, which is a new to the list game and one that's going to make Carlo so happy, I think. And that is number 20, Raw.
Nice.
Raw is so good. It's one of those games that after I played it, it just made me think, it's too bad I played this late in my life because how many years have I missed of being able to enjoy Raw. It's so good, and it's just, it has so many things that I love. It like, the aspect of the different ways you can score your different tiles that you're getting, each of them have different scoring objectives. You can go hard into certain things, or you can like it just, that whole aspect comes up in a lot of board games that I like, and it's really present here and it's done effectively here. And then on top of that, the whole bidding auction type mechanics or whatever, with the discs and the fact that you are constantly getting different numbered discs based on the one that's in the center of the board that you have to claim and replace with your own. That whole mechanic I really love. Everything, just when it all works together, it sings, and it's one that I kind of want my own copy of now, or at the very least I need to like request that we play it a whole lot more, because it's just, such a solid game, and I'm really glad finally played it.
Nice. Happy to see it on your list. And the new edition looks incredible.
Oh yeah, I love it.
I'm just sad I haven't been able to play it.
Soon.
I think I'm like a must play.
Oh, for sure. It's quick. Like you can teach and play in less than an hour easy, like 45 minutes. It's great.
My number 20 game is one that I had exclaimed that this is a top 20 game immediately when I first played it. Actually, I think I said it was a top 10 game.
Yeah, here we go.
And then
I know what this is.
slowly walked it back. This is Smartphone Inc. Smartphone Inc. immediately captured my attention just with how you're selecting your actions by overlapping certain icons to choose. You're also choosing whether to go ahead in the turn order by selling your product for a cheaper amount so you can get into different markets a lot quicker, start building up your market share. I thought it just did a phenomenal job of, we've got a little bit of area control. We've got some, an interesting selection with those, what are they, like cardboard?
Oh, like the things that you can switch out or whatever?
Yeah. iPads, let's call them, or whatever. Yeah. Or, sorry, nondescript tablets.
Yeah.
Using those things that was really, really interesting.
That's my favorite part of the game, for sure.
Yeah, so cool. Getting the different upgrades where you want to specify, like, are you going to sell yours for more money and hopefully get more out of it because you have a monopoly in this one region, or are you going to try and just expand and try and kind of screw over other competitors? It's great.
It also just like thematically, it integrates the idea of like competing cell phone corporations and selling your product, and like everything. As I just remember as we were doing it, I'm like, oh yeah, thematically that makes sense. I don't know anything about like bringing cell phone products to market, but you can still see like when you sacrifice one thing, how you increase this here. Like it just it makes sense, and games that kind of like have that thematic tie, I always just appreciate. So
Yeah, I've only played it the one time with you guys, and it was a while ago. I loved it, and I appreciate how simple the rules were and how easy it was to get into for how like much of a big board game it feels like, and that kind of economic aspect was. Yeah, it's just great.
I was actually shocked about the rules too. So, and I'm interested to see. I haven't played Mobile Markets, but I'd be intrigued.
Me too.
And we need to play Smartphone Inc. with 4 or 5 players because it probably wasn't best at 3, right?
True. With more, I think it's going to be even more cutthroat.
It'll be coming to the cabin. That's for sure.
Every game from here up till number 1 probably is. No, not all of them. Well, it was up to me on my list, but you guys won't want all these. All right, number 20 on my list. Down only 1 spot from last year, but sticking into the top 20 is For Sale. So we've already spoken about this earlier in the list. I can't remember if it was on yours, Braiden, but it was definitely on Dylan's earlier. Still my number 1 filler game of all time in terms of something that can be played in like 15, 20 minutes. There aren't many games out there like this that give you this much satisfaction and that keep you this involved. And I think the reason why this is held on this list, like despite how many new amazing games that have climbed on here, I couldn't put For Sale any lower because I've now played this game well over 100 times if you look at physical plays as well as BGA. And there aren't many filler games that can, I think, hold up that many plays without kind of like losing a bit of their luster. Like the last play I had was just as good as the first time I played it, and like I've seen all there is to see, but it plays so quick and the decisions are still so grueling, and the interaction between players, like there's a lot of trash talking between people outbidding you and stuff like that. So and the end game reveal to see the points, you never really know who wins until the end. So I just think it's kind of like the perfect designed filler game and just a classic.
Yeah. Nothing else I can really add to For Sale. Like I said, I think mine was 27 or whatever. Yeah, the more I play it, the more I appreciate it. I agree. Like it doesn't really go down in quality. It's always a good experience every time I play.
And that travel edition, man.
I know.
What a good,
comes in clutch.
What a good product that is. So small.
So good.
Aside from the money tokens, they're not.
Yeah,
great,
they're not very good quality.
But I mean, you could technically just replace the money tokens and like bring them in a little bag or something or whatever. But yeah, great pick. Okay, number 19 for me, down 6 spots from last year, which means it was 13 last year if I'm doing my math correctly. It's a game I still really love. The only reason it has moved down is pretty much just because of other games having to slide their way in, and that is Patchwork. Patchwork is still one of the most played games in my collection. I wish I tracked plays and had been doing it for years to like I could actually know what is the most played game in my collection. But I just know that in terms of especially introducing like me playing a game with someone I've never played a game with before as a 2-player, Patchwork and Codenames Duet are the 2 that kind of like come up the most. I mean, Cat Lady's in there, Splendor's been in there, but Patchwork is kind of like the go-to because it has a very unassuming and non-imposing vibe. People see it and they're like, okay, yeah, I could play a game just about quilts or whatever. Yeah, I don't tell them how cutthroat this game can be. And I also don't play a cutthroat with them the first time. I have to kind of scale myself back. But that's the other great thing about it is that like we have done, Ted hosted a Patchwork tournament on through our Discord for all of the AYCB fans and stuff. And it just reminded me and kind of unveiled to me just how cutthroat Patchwork could be, because you can really start like looking turns ahead, making picks that specifically block your opponent from something that is going to make it so that they don't score any points or get very low. Like it just gets to a point where I'm like, wow, never has a game about quilting been this deadly. So, yeah.
What are your other quilting games you played?
We have to wait till later on the list to find out. Yeah, I love Patchwork. It'll, I think, always sort of be on my list in a pretty high spot. I don't think it's going to be one that drifts off unless something comes out that replaces it for me.
I mean, I'm just going to get into it right now because my number 19 is also Patchwork.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, wow.
Is this the first time we've had the same game with the same number?
Yeah, the crossover at the same spot. Yeah.
To add on to what you said too, I think I've said this before in previous videos, I love polyomino games. The selection of tiles that you're offered, calculating if I take this tile, they're probably going to take this, and how is that going to benefit them?
Yeah.
Am I getting my button economy going early on?
Yeah.
And calculating at the end too, okay, this is going to give me so many buttons, which is going to give me this many points, but if I cover these squares, that's going to give me more points. And calculating the coverage versus button ratio of points near the end really does matter a lot.
That's such a great part of the game. It's like, do I take the one that takes off more spaces, which then gets me less minus points at the end of the game, but I also still need a button economy. Am I making enough buttons to compete with my opponent? Like, it's just, love that.
And does it even fit into
Yes.
my, are there other tiles that I'm you know, that I have to get, or
Yeah. Have any of you ever completed an entire board on Patchwork?
No.
The closest I ever came was 2 empty spots on the board.
The same for
and
me,
I've never come close to it since. It was like one time. If you've completed an entire Patchwork board, let us know in the comments below. Because I'm going to call you a liar. Just kidding.
Yeah. That's where I'm going to leave it with Pat.
I was just going to say real quick that last night after we finished filming the 30 to 21, I obviously told you guys Patchwork was number 51 for me this year, so it just barely fell off my top 50, probably as a result of all the Uwe Rosenbergs that made their way on and kind of made me reshift my thinking, but still one of the best 2-player only games around, and I don't think it'll ever leave my collection either.
Yeah.
And I'll say right now, my highest rated Uwe Rosenberg.
Wow.
That means
still
Agricola
holding out
is
hope.
not on the
I was
list.
still holding out hope for Agricola, but
We can
man.
definitively say here, for once and for all, Braiden likes a Feast for Odin better than Agricola.
But he hasn't played Agricola in person.
He also hasn't played Norwegians.
I haven't
Yeah.
played a few.
Okay, this year is going to be the year of Uwe, where we play through a bunch of his games, and
This year we're just going to lock
gonna
Braiden
try
in a
and
room and make him play the physical version of both games for an entire day.
hey,
constantly
if
back
that
and forth.
means that you guys both play Agricola with me, sign me up. Absolutely.
I'd be down for
you
it.
guys will be converted. It's just a matter of time. All right, my number 19 game is also an Uwe Rosenberg game, but not Patchwork. My number 2 Uwe Rosenberg game of all time, new to the top 50 for me, Le Havre. What a game this is, one that I have heard of since, my early days of playing Agricola. I think this came out a couple of years after Agricola, but just an absolutely incredible design. The rules are actually quite simple, despite how heavy and complex the game is in terms of the decisions. Like if you look on Board Game Geek, this is like a 3.6 or something like that for complexity, but it's actually not that hard to explain the rules. And I love the kind of like living, breathing town, or I guess harbor, Le Havre, the harbor, is in this game, because you have, depending on the setup, there's a variable setup where there's a different stack of these like building cards that are going to be available, and you can see which ones are going to be available later, but also the order of which ones are available, at the time is going to be different every time. So there's a different thing to consider there. Which resource spaces are in which spot of the board is also going to change up. So it's a different like variable setup. It's one of the only, I guess like technically a Feast for Odin has an economy with the silver, but it doesn't feel quite the same. But this is like an economic Uwe Rosenberg game, and it's just incredible. And I think why it's number 2 is that it shares one of the things I love most about Agricola, which is the accumulating action spaces, because you have this plan of, I'm going to buy this building, or I'm going to use this person's building, whatever, and then you look and you're like, oh man, but there's like 12 fish there, or there's like 6 steel, like how can I pass up that spot? And you just keep adding more every round, and it just becomes more and more tempting, trying to pull you away from your other priorities. So love this game. I've only played it 2 or 3 times. I could see this going higher up on my list in the future. Absolutely love this game.
I'm not surprised to stay on your list. I still want to play it again. I think it was one of my bigger surprises, because I remember going into it thinking this might be like, I wouldn't be like completely caught off guard if I liked this more than Feast based on what I've heard of it and stuff. And it just didn't land for me the way that I hoped. And there's a few things at play, and I think it's my own personal like preferences for games or certain mechanics that just kind of turn me off, or like the aspect of like like so much of what you're doing is like you get these buildings and then you're having to strategically know when to sell them off, invest in different buildings. Like I think that's a really cool game mechanic. It's not something I completely enjoy. I like it where if I invest in something like that, or at least if I get one of those buildings in Le Havre, I almost kind of want it to be like, oh, this is something I've now acquired, and now my strategy is kind of like dictated by this. I can have it all game or whatever, and that's just my personal preference. So yeah, I appreciate the design, but I don't know that it'll ever like land for me, at least the way that it lands for you.
That's fair. I remember you also didn't like, and I agree with you on this part, the end game kind of crunch where you just see, how can I squeeze out the most points, convert these? It becomes very mathematical in the last 2 or 3 turns, and that's probably my least favorite part of the game. But the early and mid game is incredible.
Yeah, and for me, I haven't played it.
We will play it. Some people say it's best at 3. I worry that it might be too long with 3 players, but we'll see. Maybe we'll play it with 3 sometime.
All right, you guys ready?
Feast for Odin is going to be
Number 18 for me, down 10 spots. About to send some shockwaves through the channel here. Number 18, Marvel Champions. Marvel Champions slides out of the top 10 into my 20 to 11. Few things at play here. This is one where I'll probably go over a minute by a little bit, but I still really love the game. I think I've gotten to a point with Marvel Champions, and I got to this point with Magic the Gathering. I got to it with other card games that I've dabbled in, like Hearthstone and stuff, where the game's been out long enough and enough content has been released that I'm finding it really hard to keep up with it. And especially in a game like Marvel Champions, where so much of my fun comes from deck building. Yes, I have so many cards to deck build with already, but it's hard to like battle the allure of the new and the power creep of new cards that are getting put into the game, and wanting to incorporate them in and wanting to play some other characters, and then still keep up with all the characters I have that I haven't played and whatnot. So it's almost a game that I wish that they'd be like, hey, we're taking like 6 months off of releasing new content, and we're doing some small releases, so I'd have a bit more breathing room. I just found that there was too much, and because I was covering every single pack on the channel, that might be my most played game in my collection, and definitely a solo, because I played so much of it. That I think there's also a bit of burnout that came in there from playing one game so much repeatedly. When I sit down to play Marvel Champions, I still enjoy it just as much as I did before. This is more just a symptom of this year, me appreciating other games I've been playing and wanting to give them a bit of a higher spot on this list, and then knowing that I think it's just there's just been, for me personally, too much Marvel Champions content. And where they are now, I was never an X-Men fan growing up. That wasn't my section of superheroes that I loved, and so because they're deep in exploring all the X-Men right now, I'm finding myself less intrigued about the new packs compared to when they were releasing like the Spider-Man characters or the Avengers characters or the Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff. So yeah, a few things at player. I wouldn't be surprised if next year or in future years it kind of slides back up. For this year, sliding down to 18.
Yeah. And we just lost about 5,000 subscribers.
I can see this.
I love it. I love Marvel Champions.
Yeah, I've been starting to feel the same. Like I'm at a good place where I still have a lot of content I have yet to play.
Yeah.
And don't feel like I necessarily need to be getting the newest packs, the newest expansion, whatever.
There's a lot of content out for it.
There is, and it's great. I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah, it's something that Magic the Gathering or some card games have, like even Hearthstone, is that they can create this standard format where you don't have to worry about the cards that came out a long time ago, because you can just focus on the 3 new sets or whatever. Marvel Champions is not a competitive card game that way, and you can deck build with the entire spectrum, so every card matters, and it's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah. Come back into Keyforge. Keyforge beckons.
My number 18 is one of the best gateway games and another Spiel des Jahres winner. This is Pictures. Pictures has been an absolute hit, especially with those who don't necessarily play board games all the time. I've introduced to people who are like, oh, I'm kind of okay on board games, but like I kind of get bored of them. I don't really find them interesting. And I slam Pictures on the table in front of them, and they're like, what? What's going on?
Why is there a shoelace in here?
Exactly. Yeah. What are these blocks? Like, what am I going to be making? I think it's such a creative, fantastic game. It allows you to be creative, obviously, but a lot of interpretation, a lot of questions going like, what is that? Like, how does that make that? Like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Or it's like, oh, I understand now. Or like, oh, that was like really clever of you, and you used this in this way. I think there's a lot of opportunity to be clever in it. I really, really enjoy that. And it's got a really good kind of like wow factor to it, where it's like, this is interesting because of all the different pieces, and like, how does this work? So it kind of has a little bit of mystery to it when you introduce it first too. So I think it's really great, super easy to get to the table and introduce to new players. So, Pictures.
Yeah, just missed my top 50 on it. Like, truly, I know that sounds like I was making it up. Just missed my top 50, but actually did. And I considered trying to bump it up because of how much I enjoy Pictures. I just haven't played it a lot in the last year, but every time I do, everyone at the table loves it. Like, there's something so satisfying of just seeing someone come up with the most creative way to lead you to a picture, and then they seem proud about you, seem proud for figuring it out. Like, yeah, it's a mutually, even though it's a competitive game in that style, like, it's mutually satisfying to see, who.
Definitely. Super unique, and a game that I remember thinking before I tried it, like, oh, this is probably just going to feel gimmicky. And then I played it and I was like, somehow this works. Like, it's just, hats off the designers for that.
Yeah, great shoelaces.
Great shoelaces.
Excellent shoelaces, high quality stuff. My number 18, down 3 spots from last year, still an excellent game, of course, The Quest for El Dorado. So this is one that I continue to like introduce this to new people. I think I introduced this to 2 or 3 new people over the past year, and it always gets that similar kind of reaction where people seem reluctant to try it a lot of the time because of the fact, especially like some of the more experienced gamers in my group who hear that it's kind of like a race game and they go like, oh, whatever, it kind of looks like a Gateway family style game. So people who want like a more thinky experience tend to write it off. And then they play it and they're like, this is really good. Like, man, the deck building is so smooth, and like you get the cards that you buy, like the deck is so small, so the cards that you buy, you see them quickly and you see them a lot throughout the game. And even the basic cards, like in a lot of games, like in Dominion and stuff like that, when you have your what are the 1 point cards called? I can't remember. And your like low gold cards. And a lot of those games, your basic cards are kind of boring and uneventful because you just, there's no decision to make with them. And in this, I love that even your basic little land cards are helping. You can either trade them in to buy new cards or you can use them to move around. So there's such interesting trade-offs that every single turn is a little mini puzzle to figure out that specific turn, but also in your grand scheme of like, how much do you want to deck build or how much do you want to race ahead to try and, get to those choke points before other people. Just love this game and hope to get an expansion and play it a lot more.
Yep, I already talked about it, but yeah, I agree. Great deck builder.
It's in my collection, but it didn't make my list. But it's good.
Oh.
It
will one day.
I need to play it more.
Yeah,
I need
that's
to
fair,
play it
that's
more.
fair.
I think that-
It's fallen short.
Number 17 for me, I believe, don't hold me to it, but I'm pretty sure it is my biggest climber of the entire top 50. And when I came into this video, if I had to guess before I even created my top 50 list, if I had to guess what my biggest climber was going to be, I would have guessed this game. Climbing 19 spots from last year, number 17 is So Clover. Yeah, this was a flagship year for Soul Clover in my collection. I played it so much, or not even so much. I just the games I played, and I didn't even play just my own copy. I even played a friend's copy when I went to BC. It's a game that is now I've gotten other people into, and then it's one of their favorites. They want to play when I come over. It's just so satisfying. It's easy to teach. It's so much fun to watch other people try to figure out the clues that you've left to try to guide them to putting the pieces back together. It is winnable, even with the perfect score. I've gotten pretty close a couple times, but the fact that you can add in more random cards is such a genius way of increasing the difficulty, because believe it or not, I've had it twice now where someone's clue with the random card that was inserted had that clue on the card, the exact same word. And so then we had to, and so then you have to be like, did they make a mistake here? Or was this is this an obvious tell that this was added in? There's just so many layers to So Clover, and I just have so much fun with it. Every group I've played it, every player count, I've makeshift played it at 2 just as an activity to play. Still had a great time with it, did a few rounds of it. Yeah, I honestly, I could have warranted it being higher than this, but this is where I kind of ended up with it at. But yeah, great game, and probably one of my favorite party games now for sure.
Nice. I expected it to be a little higher, actually. I mean, this is still quite the climb.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say too much about it, but I'll just say that I own 3 copies of this.
All for you, right?
Yeah.
Every time you play a different copy.
That's right, yeah.
You never know when you might wear out those cards and you need another one ready to go.
It could break at any moment. My number 17 is a popular game, one that is red hot, and we're talking about Heat, Pedal to the Metal. I played this game a surprising amount. I played it on BGA a bunch. I played it solo probably about 4 or 5 times now. I played it with you guys. I've really enjoyed this game. I'm a big F1 fan, admittedly, so the theme really speaks to me. But just picking, what I really love about this game is picking your moments of when you want to go ahead. And what I actually played, my most recent play, really even seeing, even if you're falling back a little bit at the back and you're able to keep up, the extra cooldown and the extra mechanics that you get for being last can really help you to make that push later on, so that everyone else is pushing and has heat clogging their engine. When you have all this open free room, you could be taking turns a lot faster than them, especially later on. So it's a nice push and pull, jockeying for position, making sure that you're in the right position, getting slipstream just before the end, before that end turn, because there's no slipstream when you cross the finish line. The different tracks, the different cards, never mind all the customizable cards that you can put into there too that do different things. It's a winner for me.
You know what? This is one of those games where when we played it, I remember leaving being like, yeah, it's good, and didn't think much more of it. And for some reason, it's that time away from it. Anytime I've thought back to it or seen a video on it or heard it mentioned, I'm like, that actually was really good. And I keep thinking about certain mechanics in or certain aspects of the way the theme came in. I'm like, I want to play that again. And I think if I played it like, 2 or 3 more times, it could make my top 50.
Especially because with Swool, you'll start building or drafting the cards at the start to make your car a little bit different. It'll get more interesting like that. I just picture you sitting around on a Saturday or Sunday morning or whatever, watching F1 on the TV while playing Heat. Have you done that yet?
No,
either one needs your full attention.
That's right. Maybe I'll play it after.
Yeah. What if you just set it up and while you're watching the screen, you're going, ooh, but you're like recreating the race practically. Yeah, for your dog to enjoy and watch.
Yeah, of course.
There you go.
Future content on the channel.
Just me making sound effects.
Number 17 on my list is another Reiner Knizia game, down 4 spots from last year, Blue Lagoon. So Dylan spoke about this in one of our previous videos on this in this series here. Still one of my favorite tile laying games ever. Still one of my favorite Reiner Knizia games. Just an incredible game where you do only one thing every turn. You just place a tile somewhere adjacent to a previous tile, or I guess depending which phase, depending on the rules, whatever. But 2-phase game, which we've talked about a lot, that we absolutely love. But that aspect of everyone being aware of what other people's priorities are and trying to suss out where people are trying to get, if someone's trying to get that 4 of a kind of a specific resource, or they need that one resource that they don't have yet, or they're trying to get to that island, or they're trying to connect. And it's kind of like looking around and anticipating who's going to put the pressure on someone where. So one person goes next to one of your tiles and then another person goes next, and then when it comes around to you, now you have to pick, do I want that resource or that one? Because the next turn it comes back around to me, one of those is gone. So now I have to figure out which one of these is a higher priority for me. For a game that it's one of those games that for the price point and how easy the rules are, it's kind of like one of those really good crossover games between like less experienced gamers and more experienced, that it's just a hit with everyone I've ever played it with. I love Blue Lagoon.
Yeah, not much more I can say about it. I agree. It's just, I'm surprised, well, it hasn't dropped that much.
No,
but,
4 spots.
Yeah, it's still in the same bracket for you, which is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, again, I think I said this before, but if I played it more, it wouldn't have dropped for me. It might have even like stayed where it was, even moved up, because it is one that the more you play it, the more you appreciate how fun it is. Like it's just a fun game.
Yeah, just how the 2 different phases play kind of differently, and again, depending on what choices that your opponents are making, you have to, like, again, puts you pressure, like, you're like, okay, now I need to put this hot here, right? Like, I need to be placing things there,
Setting up for that second phase.
That's right.
And two-phase games.
I know.
So good.
I know.
So good. My number 16 was 16 last year. I was surprised to see it didn't move at all. And that is Root. Root is... a game I came to the party late on. Everyone was already raving about Root. All the expansions, I think, were already out by the time I played the base game. I've now played every expansion and own every expansion except for Riverfolk. This is the board game that I've incorporated the most expansions into and played the most expansions for. So I've played like almost all the classes myself and played against many of them. It is such a satisfying and fun and competitive game. The only caveat being that I truly think you have to find a group that has all played it enough that when you sit down, you don't have to do a full rules teach. You just have to like remind them about a couple of things, or people have to look up a class they've never played before just to kind of see the mechanics. But because there's such a disparity between someone who's never played before and doesn't understand the classes and how they play against each other compared to someone who has, it's hard to kind of come in and have a good experience at that point. But if you have a group that you've consistently played with or has played enough, coming back to Root is so much fun each time, because you remember how people play classes, you remember the strategy, you try to like go against the strategies they're going for, maybe someone's come prepared for that. Like it is such a fun little game of like little woodland creatures battling it out. Each have their own objectives, ways to win, some drastically different than other ones. Some are burrowing underground, some are, crossing mountain. Like it's just one only has a single tile, whereas like the cats have like 25 or something. The vagabond has a single one that moves through the forest. Like it's just, they find these really creative ways to incorporate new classes into the game, and each one I find is just super satisfying, even if they're not like all equal on power all the time. Really fun game, and one that I'm gonna hopefully introduce to you guys. Or you've played it before, but
I played it once. Yeah,
introduce you like to a little bit more, so that you can have like. I'm just curious if both of you, if either of you will like it, even if not as much as me, if you'll like it enough to like be like, oh, I would consider that for my top 50 if you played it enough and played some of the other classes.
Yeah, I mean, if this is anything like Oath, I think I have an inkling that I will really like this game. I have the app on my phone.
Yeah,
I've started the tutorial probably like 4 or 5 times.
Right.
And like just haven't I haven't been able to commit the time to actually learn. But it looks very interesting.
Yeah, it's super fun.
And I will say there's a lot of games where combat is decided by dice, and in a lot of those games I don't like the way it's done, kind of like I didn't like it in Oath, but I really respect the way it's done in Root. And I have it on Steam. I'm going to try to play the digital version a bit this year to sort of catch up and learn the factions, and then I'll be ready to play it with you guys, your group of sharks in person.
Yeah, sounds good.
Wait, there's sharks in Root?
Yeah, that's the new class. So you heard it here first.
My number 16 is a game that I actually really surprised me how high it climbed, and this is Acropolis.
Oh.
I really enjoyed Acropolis a lot. Not a ton of player interaction in this game. One that I recommended for the gift guide because I had such a great time. Fits perfectly in that puzzle kind of range where you're working a little bit on your own board. There's a little bit of player interaction when you're selecting the different tiles, but building out the city, putting the ability to put other city parts on top of others to kind of cover and maybe connect and score more points. The adjacencies, the different scoring scenarios, like you could be focusing on a different color compared to your opponent. You could be hate drafting, taking that away to score yourself points. Very similar scoring, I would say, actually, to, it kind of reminds me of King Domino in that way, where you're multiplying times the number of stars, I think. Yes. Just a great little game that you can just focus doing on your own thing. I love putting that puzzle together, thinking about how you're building your city and seeing it all kind of come together. Maybe you take a tile and you're like, oh, I was going to do this, and you find a place for it, and it just becomes so satisfying.
Yeah, great game. I love the way you're having to cover up other things that you've already started building.
Yeah.
Being like, but I just placed that on the tile, but this does make more sense to do this. And I think the rules are like 3 pages, like so streamlined. I really respect that about this game.
You compared it when you were talking to me about it the other day a bit to Cascadia.
Yeah.
So there's comparable elements to it.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, like, especially the drafting, very similar. Not entirely, but yeah.
Sort of. You have 4 options to pick from every turn, and you can kind of spend your, your stone to kind of pick different options and stuff. So it kind of has that with Cascadia for sure.
I really want to play this game. Based on what I've heard of it from both of you, I think I'll like it a lot too.
Yeah, and it plays in like 20 or 30 minutes.
Nice.
It's so quick.
It is very quick. And yeah, you have incentives for placing your tiles on top of other to get more stone, to give yourself more options. It's great.
It sounds
very
great.
tricky.
I like it. I like it.
All right, number 16 on my list, down 6 spots. So out of the top 10, this hung on to my top 10 for a couple of years. That is Arboretum. So Dylan spoke about this a couple videos back, I think it was. The main reason why this has dropped is sort of as a result of other games moving ahead of it, and also because, unfortunately, like you, I also didn't play Arboretum this past year. I think it's a game that, maybe it's partly because even though it's still really good with 3 players, I never suggest it with 3. I'm kind of stubborn about only playing it with 4 for some reason, because that's where it really, really, really shines. And there's just, sometimes I know that the people I'm playing with might not want to play it. And the other thing is, if you're playing with, let's say, 3 people who've played it before and there's 1 new person, it always takes at least a game to understand, like, everyone always struggles a bit with the tableau building aspect and how you can lay your cards out and how they actually score in that respect. And I think that's the one thing that I don't like as much about it. But every turn you want to just keep all of your cards. You don't want to discard anything out to the public area, because then you know someone's going to take that card that you discarded. It's almost always going to happen. You don't want to play a card yet because you want to save it and see if there's a better use for it later, whether you can get more points for it or keep it to deny someone else points or to score your own points for it. I just love that aspect of holding cards to see who's going to actually score for that category at the end of the game. Just incredible little game in a small box. One of the best card games out there.
Yeah, solid game. I already talked about it. You haven't played it. You need to play it.
it.
We'll sit you down and you'll play it.
Cabin.
All right. Number 15 for me, brand spanking new to the list. Debuting, I played it for the very first time this year, and it also came out this year. Brand new game. Some people at this table might have thought it was going to be in the top 10. It's not in the top 10, but it is 15. That is Age of Innovation, a Terra Mystica game. So I played this twice. It's my first real in-depth experience of Terra Mystica. We played Terra Nova beforehand, but that's a very slimmed down version of it. It is good. I really like it. I think if I had played it more, I probably could have cracked the top 10. But even just based on 2 plays, I'm putting it at 15. I think that says a lot. It is a game about terraforming different land on the board to your own land types so that you can build your own buildings on them. You're upgrading those buildings, you're getting bonuses. There's so much variability in this version of the game. Pretty much, I would say almost every component you put down to the board has some sort of modular setup involved with it, where you're going to have different things that you didn't see the last game. Some of them are really important powers that will change the entire dynamic of how the game's going to feel like it's playing. By that I mean, we had a tile that was, there's these book actions, and one of the tiles that we had in our game that we last played was for 1 book you can get 5 power, which we didn't have in the first game I played, and everyone would want to take that really, at the start of the turn, if that was available, you would take it. But near the end of the game, that tapers off because power is not as hard to come by. And so just that changed how our early game felt compared to the first game I played. And the fact that there's so many tiles that for so many different things and abilities and powers and upgrades that are changed every game, it makes every game feel so unique. Every one of the classes has a different tile that's paired with it every time you play, as well as a different starting terrain. So if you have the navigators, it's this game they're the forest navigators, next game they're the desert navigators, next game they're not even in the game. I just love it. There's so much. I think I have as much fun setting up the game and seeing what the combinations are going to be as I do actually playing it. So yeah, I love Age of Innovation. I think this is going to be one that I'm suggesting and playing for a long time to come. I've played it at 3 players and 4 players now. Loved both. I'm curious. It plays up to 5. Curious to try a 5 and 2 and see if there's one player count that stands out. But so far 4 has been my favorite, because the more competition you have for the territory, the more exciting the game is for sure.
You played this recently. I know you didn't like it quite as much as Dylan. Do you think there's any potential for it to be top 50 material for you ever?
Maybe. I think my main criticism with the game is that it's very long.
Yeah,
and there also isn't. At least maybe the more plays we would have, there'd be more player interaction. But it felt very much a little bit like you're on your own island. I'm sure with more players, that would solve that. I do respect what I really liked about it, like you said, the variability. The variability and how the game is going to change and how you're going to try to play towards those objectives throughout. I think is really, really cool. And you have the base, you have the base of the game. Yeah, those variabilities really change up the game, I think, from game to game to game.
And I think that we're not, and that's would make sense to me because we haven't played a lot of it, but I don't think we're also utilizing player interaction as much as you're supposed to be successful. Because I think we're always kind of we used to well, if I can stay away from the people, then I won't be contesting them, but they won't be contesting me. But in this game, you get power for things being built and upgraded next to you. So there's incentive to start building near your opponents and forcing player interaction. And that really only happened in the second game I played, and only minorly. And I feel like if I played with the style of I'm going to build next to people purposely, that it would create more player interaction by necessity, and it would feel like the game was kind of going back and forth between players a little bit more, and this feeding off this. Because when it happened with me and Jake that one time where we were getting power from each other, that felt super satisfying to me. So yeah, there's more to explore in there for sure. But you're right, it is a very long game. I wonder if after you play with people, you don't have to do real explanations and everyone kind of knows the flow, if maybe it gets done quicker, but it does still feel like a long game.
Okay, I have to ask you something real quick. Yeah. I expected the community to be unanimously saying this is better than Terra Mystica, the original, and I've actually been hearing a lot of people, I still think more people are saying that, but I've heard a surprising amount of people say that they still prefer the original Terra Mystica. Are you still open to playing Terra Mystica?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I would still play it. For me, I love variability and modular setup so much, and so if anything, I'm more excited to play Gaia Project and see how I compare these two than I am to go back to the original Terra Mystica. But I would still love to play it, because then at some point I'd love to kind of compare all the versions now that I've already played Terra Nova as well. So
cool. My number 15 game is actually very similar to Age of Innovation, and this is Quacks of Quedlinburg.
Bag building and all,
variability of setup. Come on, guys.
Age of Quedlinburg.
Can you imagine? Quacks of Quedlinburg, a really great bag builder. I like to equate this to Mario Party. Very simple to get to the table. I really like the push your luck aspect to it. This is a very light game. I don't take it too seriously. I'm not looking for deterministic outcomes. I stick my hand in the bag, pull something out, and something happens, kind of thing. Seeing the chips that you built your bag around and then pulling those out is really rewarding. I have the upgraded bits, which is always so satisfying. So good. This is great. This is great to introduce to new players as well. I think, it's just very easy going. there's a lot of swings in it sometimes too, right? With the rat tails kind of evening things out. And I like the variability that comes in the box of like the different chips that you can get to build your bag, and you mix and match, and that's going to change how the game kind of plays overall. So yeah, Flex.
Slid off my list this year, but it was on my list both previous years, as high as I think like 17 or 18 or something, or 13, somewhere in there.
The first 2 years ago it was number 9. You had it in your top 10, and then it went down to 41.
I don't think I had it in my top 10. Did I actually?
Yep, 9 to 41.
My number was 13. Now, number 13 is a game called Quacks of Quedlinburg.
And now it's gone. I'm curious to see if it'll have a similar drop for you, because it was also a game that I really liked the first time I played it, and with each subsequent play I enjoyed it less, so it's kind of dipped for both of us, but we'll see what happens with you.
I would say this is like my slot machine game. This is like
It's so much fun.
Yeah, like I'm not there to get like a brain burning experience, but I'm there pulling the lever and just seeing what happens.
Yeah. It is satisfying that way.
All right, my number 15 game, down 6 spots as well. This is the one that every year has always been 1 spot ahead of our Braiden. It's like right neck and neck every year, and that is Battle Line, which Braiden already spoke about, I think, in the last section, 30 to 21. I think this is still my number 1 2-player only game. And it's still a game that every single, I would say aside from Dylan, every single person I've introduced it to has like loved this game and either gone and bought their own copy or requested to play it again. The sort of fact that you're battling over 9 spots and that you're laying down cards, and the cards, what I think gets overlooked a lot about this game is that people say like, well, the cards are just numbers with colors. Like if you're not playing with the tactics cards, or you're not factoring those in. But that gives you a lot of flexibility, because cards that have specific abilities in other games, you can only play them one way. And I love the fact that a red 3 or a purple 8 can have different meanings. It can be part of a 3 of a kind. It can be part of a straight flush. Like you're making these sort of 3-card poker hands, and just putting one out there gives your opponent some info about what you might be doing, but you could be bluffing, or you could have one intention and later you might draw cards that allow you to make a bigger hand, or then you might just go somewhere else and make someone overcommit thinking that they need some better hand to beat you somewhere else. Love, love, love this game, and this will never leave my collection.
I think one other thing that I didn't add when I spoke about it before was like when you see your opponent play down like 2 9s, let's say, and you're holding the other cards that they need to play, and you're just sitting there going, this sucker, he can't do anything about that. It's so good.
Yeah, the pinnacle of hand management.
I've already kind of said my thing. I like it. For some reason, that game with the look and the style of it, maybe I'm realizing that like artwork, style, colors, whatever, certain games I need that, but in other games like Castles of Burgundy, I don't know. It's very weird.
Well, let's get you the Battleline medieval version with the spruced up artwork, and let's see if we can convert you.
Number 14 for me, down 3 spots from last year, barely moved, still really, really like it. That is Res Arcana. Res Arcana, I actually considered it for as high as, like when I was making my list, I had it at one point at number 9 even, like I almost moved it up. It's a really, really solid game. I've I think only played it once this year, and that barely moved. That says a lot to it. I love it. I think that sometimes it plays much longer than it needs to. I think 2 players is my favorite count because of that. I think sometimes the cards that you get can make for a less interesting experience, but I don't hold that against Res Arcana because it's a game that I love the draft version of it. I love the random version of it just for the mayhem and having to figure out a strategy out of it. And I just really enjoy the toughest thing I have about Res Arcana is because you only do one action on your turn, and I think that's why I like it at 2 players. I want to do so many actions. I'm so excited by all my combo cards, but I think that says a lot about the game. Where like in some ways, I don't have analysis paralysis with this game because I'm already thinking like 3 or 4 moves ahead, and rarely is my opponent's move going to like completely change my strategy. So turns usually fly by pretty quickly when I'm going, and I'm very excited about what I'm creating. And then I start to see my opponent doing something well. I'm like, oh man, I thought I had a great strategy. Now they're racing ahead. I got to change what I'm doing. Like competing for such a low point count. Everything about this game, I find super satisfying. But it is one that I'm learning that I think I may only approach with 2, maybe 3 if I was playing with people that are like, I've never played, I want to try it out. I'm not going to say no to that, but yeah, it does oftentimes just go on a little bit longer than it probably should.
Yeah, I've enjoyed my plays with it, like I said before. And it's interesting, there are points in Res Arcana where if you put yourself in a spot where you know your opponent can take advantage of it, like let's say you're out of like a green resource and you have no way to block it, like you need to be thinking about that ahead of time before you start working on other things.
Yeah.
Right? Because otherwise they're going to exploit that, and then
Yeah.
gone are your resources. Good night.
Yeah. This was the biggest faller on my list. For anyone who missed, this was at number 44. I said enough about it then, but
Yeah.
take it away.
Number 14, also a faller now for me, moving down 6 spots. This is One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Still a fantastic game. Really, really like it. I mean, again, one of the best small box social deduction games. Quick playing. Again, easy to get to the table. Still gives you that social deduction experience, and honestly has created some of the most memorable gaming memories for me. And I'm so glad it's recorded from our live stream.
I know.
Like I've gone back and watched us playing it and laughed like
Those
time
games were incredible.
after time after time. It's just so good, and like I would not have that without One Night Ultimate Werewolf. I think it just there's no other game that really kind of replicates that kind of feeling. I am surprised that it's moved down so much, but I think there's just a few other games that I wanted to have ahead of it. Still phenomenal. I still have a high regard for it. And because it's so quick playing, like, you're going to play 5-6 rounds.
Yeah.
Like that really, really benefits it. And I haven't even played it with like the expansions either. Like I haven't
Oh, really?
any expansions, just
I have
vanilla.
I have one
should.
expansion for it, and it's really good. I mean, in some ways it complicates the games, but not every role is a winner in that one. But the expansion still offers kind of new things you can put in to kind of shake up the
Yes.
formula. I will say, this is kind of an aside, but I know we mention the games on the live stream a lot. If you're wanting to watch any of these yourself, it's not in our regular videos. Make sure you click the live tab on the top. It's the only ones that are in there, and you can go and watch any of the games we played throughout the 24-hour stream.
Yeah, I have to say, that game where Dylan convinced us to vote out his werewolf teammate and he only realized it at the voting. He's like, but wait, no, they're the werewolf. Oh my God, what have I done? So good. And quick question for you. What's your favorite, in terms of, like, what's the most interesting role?
Oh, probably the Troublemaker is
Yeah.
really, really good because you get a chance to swap out something, and you like I did a few times, just like completely lie about it, and then
That's the go-to.
the actual,
I swapped your roles, and then they start to say stuff, and you're like, "Oh, that's cool," because I was lying. I actually swapped your roles.
You always wait and lie about it, and then you're the troublemaker.
But then, like, the next level to that is, like, you completely lie about being the troublemaker while swapping it, and then you're actually the seer. You're like that, like those kind of levels.
Yeah, so good.
Yes. Shriek it.
Number 14 on my list is a game new to my top 50. Completely just jumped right up there into number 14, and that is Ra, which you spoke about at number 20 in this video. Incredible game. This is one that I could see potentially moving higher up on my list. I think I've only played it 3 times so far, or 4 times, and it's always been with 3 players. But from the very first time we played it together, Dylan, with I think it was with Kevin, I think we both knew, like, this is incredible. And like you very aptly kind of pinned that thing about, like, it's similar as to modern art, where like we played it and we're like, this game came out when we were like, how old, like maybe teenage. I think this was like 99 or something like that. And it was like, why have we not been playing this game our whole lives? Like, it feels like something we could have played when we were teenagers. Incredible auction game with bidding, the way that the tiles work, and you can even sometimes just having the bigger tiles to kind of bully other people out of auctions or forcing them to then use a bigger tile. You're like, I don't really want to win this auction, but I know that so-and-so does, and instead of letting them win it with their 2, I'm going to play my 7s that they have to play their 9 or whatever. The way that you can trigger the auctions early or late and kind of trying to determine whether the tiles are more valuable to someone else or less valuable or whatever. Just so many things to consider every single turn with dead simple rules. Love this game.
Yep. I was even thinking this could. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was in your top 10. I knew it was going to be high for you, so yeah, this is a good spot for it.
It sounds fun.
It sounds fun, and you'll find out really soon at the cabin. All right, my number 13, yes, is down 3 spots from last year. Slight move, but that means it's out of the top 10 for the first time because it was in the top 10 both of my previous lists. That is Lost Cities. Lost Cities is a game that in some ways may have like peaked as in terms of the highest spot it's ever going to get on my top 50 now, But I think it's sort of settling into this place where I don't know that it's never going to leave my top 50 unless I get tons of games that like Enchanted Plumes in and find that it truly does replace it. But otherwise, I just have so many memories of this. It probably, if this is the game where if I count online plays, then for sure this is my most played game ever because I played so much Lost Cities online. It's so damn good.
Former number 1 ranked player on BGA.
No, second. I got second that month.
Okay.
I fought for first, but I got second. Yeah. It's my favorite. Like in terms of hand management implementation, I think it's my favorite, even though it's so simple. There's something that in Lost Cities is just so infuriating in a way that just makes me smile and laugh, which sounds at odds with itself, but something about always looking at your hand and knowing that you can't block your opponent and keep everything you want at the same time. Yeah. So how much are you willing to wait out your opponent, waiting for them to play a card that makes you feel safe about putting something down, or how much are you willing to say, I'm going to give them this card, I know they're going to scoop up because what I want to do is more important. That battle I do every single game, and every single game it feels so satisfying. Love Lost Cities. It's 13, down 3 spots, but really my love for it hasn't really changed.
We talked about the live stream again. I lost almost every single game we played in that 24 hours. This was one of the very few victories I had. It was the last game we played when we were both just running on fumes, but it was still very fun.
Yeah, so good. My number 13 is my highest co-op on the list.
Nice, I know what this is.
Do you? What is it?
Well, I don't want to say. Well, okay.
Go ahead.
The Crew, Mission Deep Sea.
It is. It's the Quest for Planet 9 because I don't own Mission Deep Sea, but I have played it once. I'd put Mission Deep Sea on there. It's just a better version, I think, for sure. Yeah. So let's just put the Crew in general. One of the two, whatever you'd like. The co-op version, I've played this with my in-laws, and they've actually really enjoyed it too. This part of Trick Takers. There's always that like giggling sense of like, what is going on? Like, why did they play that card? And then like things work out along the way, like down the chain. You guys have talked about this already too. I've really enjoyed it. And I think this is actually my highest Trick Taker on this list now that I look about it as well. So, just so clever, constantly replayable. The different missions give you different objectives as you go along too. There's so many of them. Like, I think I've gotten halfway through the quest for Planet 9.
Yep. So fun.
I love it. I love it so much. Just the limited communication that you can give out and like choosing which cards and being limited to the cards that you can give out as information. And if that's going to be helpful for someone else too, like putting all those things together makes it a winner.
Yeah, I think if we did what we did that one time with the cabin video, like if we took all the games that are across like collectively on our list and tried to make a collective top 10, top 20, I think based on our collective love for the Crew, it might even be like a top 10 game, top 20 game.
Oh, for
based
sure.
On the
for all of us
yeah.
combined, I think it would be probably number 2 or 3.
Yeah, it speaks, in this group, we speak very highly of the Crew.
That's
Great
right.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, we're a crew.
Yep, I will have more to say about it right now because it is also my number 13.
Wow.
Mission Deep Sea version. So this one is down 6 spots. So it did drop from number 7 simply because I did not play it in the last year. I played it a lot around the holidays last year, and it was a big hit with some of the people I played it with. But it just hasn't gotten back to the table, and I think the main reason why this has slipped out of the top 10 and doesn't get back to the table more often is I think it's sort of a personal thing about me that I'm very particular about playing games in their best player count or in their best setting. And so even though it still works well with 3, I have found that I like it most with 4 because everyone gets the same number of cards dealt out, whereas with 3, someone gets an extra card every round, I think. And it's always a tough sell to me to start with a new group because I always want to start from the beginning and go in order. I'm very particular about doing the scenarios in order. And so like I want to get a group that starts from the beginning and actually plays through this because every group I've played it with gets up to like 10 scenarios and loves it, but then we don't get it back to the table and then it just sits on the shelf, and it's a game that I want to play a lot more. I love the fact that you can send these, again, clues with the cards you play and everything. We've talked about it enough on the channel in previous years, but I'll just wrap up by saying it is still to me the pinnacle of cooperative games, trick-taking, and limited communication. The fact that it does all 3 of those as well as it does is just, a game that is like a masterpiece of game design in my opinion.
So we have a joint pick here. We have a joint pick here. The only one missing is if you and me get one, we've had one for every connection or combination.
In the 20
here.
to 11 specifically?
No, I just mean in this
You're
video.
talking about at the same, at the same number on the list.
Yeah.
And I guess, just in this video, we
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
20 to 11. There's something magic about this. Just outside the top 10.
It's a magic. 2011 is a really magical bracket. It ends up with a lot of really good games in there.
Magic.
Number 12 for me. Also dropping out of the top 10, down 6 spots from number 6 last year. That is Biblios. Still love this game. I honestly didn't play it. I think I only played it once this last year, and maybe I'm even remembering it from the previous year, so maybe I didn't play it. I just have so many fond memories of Biblios, and I love it so much that this is the most I felt comfortable dropping it, even without those plays. I find the two-phase aspect in Biblios to be one game where I should say one game where it shines. One of the many games that I find where it shines. But I just love the aspect of competing for those dice and then thinking like, oh man, I'm doing so good and going for green in this game and green die is high. But if you make that too obvious, if it's too blatant that I'm going for that, everyone's just going to lower that die and suddenly it means nothing that I've gone for that. And it's so cutthroat that way that if people are in tune with sort of what cards they think people are grabbing, what they seem to be going for, what they seem to be snatching away from the collective the cards that are put down for everyone else to kind of feed off of, it can get really, really strategic, and I love that. And you're right, some games of Biblios kind of don't land as much as others, or don't feel quite as satisfying, but I just found that the satisfying games of Biblios are among my favorite gaming memories. Even when we were, during the pandemic, playing it on Tabletop Simulator, those games are really, really fun. All the times I've played it, the physical version, I've loved it. It's one of those ones that I ordered randomly off of BoardGameBliss.com, I think, when we first got into board games, and I had it on my shelf, only played it once as a 2-player game, I think, and then it sat there for a while, and then I started to hear it from, I think it was the
Mark from Board Game Barrage
talking about it,
for
and I was
years,
like,
yeah.
I had that game, and then I played it with a different lens. I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah,
So yeah.
Where does this rank for you guys in terms of games about monks?
Ooh. I mean, you're gonna have to stay tuned for my top 10 monk games. It's coming out.
I mean, would D&D be considered? Because they have a monk class in D&D.
There's a monk class in Age of Innovation, so technically this is ahead of innovation on the monk scale.
Yeah, I'm actually sad that this isn't in my top 50.
Me too.
Back on this game. I actually remember talking about playing on a tabletop simulator.
Yeah.
I remember I took a screenshot of the first game I played with you guys because my hand, when the first time I played it was all gold.
No.
I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna lose. I ended up winning that game.
Wow, look at you.
Well played, well played.
But
you often win a game the first time you play it.
yeah, it's because you guys always fight each other.
He knows
me. He's new. He's get each other.
Because we want people to like the games we introduce them to, so we take it easy the first time.
Yeah, but it was really, really fun.
Yeah, so good.
My number 12 is a bit of a shock to me, actually, a little bit too. Even a little bit more surprised that it's ahead of One Night Ultimate Werewolf, and this is Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. Another social deduction game, and it won't be the last one going forward. But this is a game where, again, one of the reasons why I like this game is that this is let's say a liar adverse friendly game.
Liar adverse friendly game.
So you don't have to if you if you hate lying and you don't like playing social deduction games because of that, this is a great game to play. If you're still able to get that social deduction feel to it, but it's not quite the same. One person is in charge of kind of giving clues to figure out who the killer is, and you have these different implements as well as, let's call them ingredients for murder.
Yeah.
Or different items, basically. And you're trying to give clues to the person who has chosen what the murder weapon and item is. It's just very interesting, abstract. You're putting even the little tokens that you're putting in the little bullets on top of each category. You're switching out the categories because you're okay, well, they're getting led down the complete wrong path here. This has nothing to do with weights or anything like that. Let's take out the living room because your weights are in the living room. My God, how would I know that? Place something else in there, substitute it in. It's great in that way, and it's a little puzzle for everyone to kind of figure out and for one person to try and spread misinformation about.
Yeah, I really like Deception. When I play Deception, I wish I could play every round being the clue giver. I like being like one of the other players as well, but that being that clue giver, there's something satisfying about not being able to communicate and having to just like place these little bullets on different things. And as soon as I do have it, everyone go, oh, and then they all like, and everyone just like, oh, what is this? And I'm just kind of like being like, yeah, how well can I communicate this? And sometimes you do it well, sometimes you don't, but like, it's so fun.
It's very similar to like the feeling of So Clover, where you bring it out, they're like trying to solve it, and you're just sitting there going, oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've only played this once, and it was probably like 4 or 5 years ago now. I really enjoyed it, but it's been too long. I'd like to play it again sometime.
Super fun.
All right, number 12 on my list is another new to my top 50 game, just way up there. I couldn't quite justify putting it in the top 10. A game that Dylan spoke about earlier in this list. Oh. Maybe a previous video, I can't remember. Zubadis.
Wow, that's high.
Man. Number 1 negotiation game, and the reason why I felt comfortable putting it this high is because Bonanza was in my 30 to 20 range, and I knew right away just from the first play that I liked it more than Bonanza. One of the biggest first impressions a game has ever given me, and we played it probably 2 or 3 times. I'm going to look real quick. I think if I look at my top 10 games, I think this is probably the 3rd highest game on my entire top 50 in terms of a laugh-inducing game. There's only 2 games in my top 10 that make me laugh a lot that I also love, but this game has that balance of, like a lot of the games that do make us laugh, games like Wavelength, those party games, So Clover, whatever, those games aren't like a board game where you're able to strategize, really. Those are different types of games, and this game makes me laugh so hard when we played it, while actually having, like, you look at this board and try and figure out how am I going to get this piece to the end, and the fact that you could actually do stuff. If people don't want to negotiate with you, you can just be like, fine, then I'm just going to move that peacock, the neutral peacock, and someone goes like, oh my God, I have to move that peak. Oh no, I need to get into the star. Okay, no, yeah, let's make a deal. And you're like, yeah, that's right, buddy. Let's talk. And you don't know until the end, because you have people's private, like their laurel tokens, the points are hidden behind the screen. You don't really know until the end who's gonna win, so there's so much tension and unknown throughout the game, and the freedom and kind of like, it feels like a sandbox negotiation game, because you can negotiate with votes, with your tokens, with your player power that you can't even use for yourself. There's just so much creativity and flexibility in this game. I cannot wait to play this game a lot more, and this one is absolutely coming to the cabin, and if it doesn't get played, I will never speak to you guys again. Sorry, maybe a little extreme, but we have to play this again.
I like it.
I'm really looking forward to playing this more. I mean, it's already on my list from the limited times I have played it, but it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
And again, it's a game that I think is always going to be more fun to me in the interactions around the table than actually the mechanics in the game, which is that's not a knock on the game. That's like the same way I feel about the Mind, and in some ways even games like Modern Art and stuff like that. There's something about the interaction that just elevates everything about the game to another tier higher, and I just love it so much.
Yeah, this game makes you laugh a lot, so this is kind of like your live, laugh, love game.
Yeah.
Well,
And the other,
I'd put it, let's sully the one.
Number 11 for me, just missing on the top 10, and I had this as high as 8 before finally landing here at 11. Moved up 6 spots from last year. That is one of my favorite 2-player games, Radlands. I love Radlands. I love it so much. And it's the simplicity of it. It's the fact that it's the first game I've played that you are both drawing from the same deck. And I remember knowing that going in and thinking, oh, that might be something I don't like about this game, based on my experience with card games. And then it ended up being one of the things I most liked about the game, because the aspect that I can never quite predict what I'm getting because my opponent might get it and play it against me is really interesting, because the more I play Radlands, the more I can start to know like what they might have in their hand, what they might be going for, what they might be trying to combo. And of course, the aspect of picking your bases, or whatever, I can't remember the exact term they're called in the game, but the camps that you're trying to guard with your 3 lanes. I just find that such a satisfying start to a board game that I own. Like
a mini draft.
Yeah, to draft that, but the fact that it also is not just the abilities you're going to have and that influencing what your strategies might be, but also what your starting hand size is, which we've learned is so important to kind of balance. There's just so many interesting strategies that you can already be adopting before you even played a single card, just by the decisions you're making at the start. And then I just find the swingy nature and the back and forth and never being completely out of the game, and holding on by a thread to your last camp, and sometimes being able to pull off the win, or just making it really hard for your opponent to wear down your units. I just have such a great time with Radlands. I've introduced it to other people. I have friends like across the country who have bought it, and if some pictures saying we can't stop playing Radlands now. I love it. It's a game that doesn't need a sequel or anything, but I selfishly wanted to do more games like it because I just realized this aspect of playing off the same deck, a simple 2-player battling game that involves lanes like that. I love it. I would play more games in this universe. I would play more games of this style of gameplay. Love Radlands.
Before anyone in the comments says it too, you have played other games drawing from the same deck, Lost Cities, Battle Line, Arboretum, but those are just like a number and a color. They're not cards that have abilities on them, right?
And I consider this like, I guess I meant it more as like Lost Cities doesn't seem like a 2-player card battling game to me. I know
right, you're talking like something like Magic and Hero Realms and those kinds of,
I equate it more to that because of the theme, because of the types of cards that are in it. In that style of game, I don't think I played one. I guess,
but you're drawing from a display, you're not drawing off the top of a deck.
Fantasy Realms.
Yeah, Fantasy Realms.
Yeah, but there's also you draw from a discard.
And it's not really a battling, like we're
it's not,
fighting each other. Something about the way that Radlands put the semantics. Yeah, I played lots of games that I draw from the same deck. But yeah, I love Radlands. Number 11 just misses the top 10.
My number 11 is my favorite card battler game, which is Lost Cities. No, it is Lost Cities actually.
Oh, it is. Okay, so I was like, why are you joking about Lost Cities?
No, I love Lost Cities. I've talked about this in the previous videos, but one of the first games that became a part of my collection early on, and has stayed solid and constant throughout. I don't think this is going to be going anywhere in my list for years to come. But just super solid. All the stuff that you talked about earlier in the video, the decisions that you have to make, weighing the fact, like, are they going to need this handshake card, or can I hold on to it? And they play down like a 2 or something into that color, and you're like, okay, thank God.
Unload.
Get rid of this. It's like, oh God, like, let's leave it all out on the table now, finally, thank goodness. And pick up something different. So yeah, just that tension, the decisions you have to make. And I really appreciate the fact that you're playing a best of 3 as well.
Yeah.
Or not best of 3, but you're playing 3 games
collectively,
right? And then the top score from that, because it helps balance out any kind of randomness that you might get from that draw. From that too. So.
Sometimes it didn't balance the randomness that me and Carlo had in the live stream. I got destroyed.
Blame it on the randomness.
It's not entirely, but it helps. And I think that's just, it's such smart design, and that's obviously what you're going to get.
Yeah, one thing
I
didn't mention, and you kind of reminded me of, is I really do love the aspect of, as it nears the end of the game, you can either try to rush the ending by drawing only from the deck, or you can try to prolong it by drawing from the face-up cards because you have more to do. And the fact, whatever you see your opponent doing, you can kind of get an inkling whether they're like, they're satisfied or they're not. Like, that whole aspect, it just adds this tension to the end of the game that I love. Yeah, so good.
Great team.
My number 11, the last game for this video, up 20 spots from last year. The highest ranked game on my list that I have only played in digital format, Tigris and Euphrates. Braiden, you had this in the last video. This is maybe the most impressively designed game I've ever played. It's definitely in the top 3 or 4 in terms of, like, I don't know how someone came up with this game. The dimensions of the board, the way everything is laid out, the way that you have the leaders that have slight differences to them. There's all these little subtleties, the differences between a war and a conflict. It's one of those games that, for how relatively simple the rules are, like, it definitely takes, I feel like with every play, you're figuring out something new. It's a game where I used to think the first few times I played it, where like, I thought there was like a bit of a runaway leader thing, and that once someone is kind of entrenched on the board and they've got this strong position, that it's kind of too late and that you should have done something sooner. And now I've started figuring out these different ways that you can kind of dislodge someone from the board and kind of get your foothold in there and find ways to get back in the game and sort of, get someone out of their seat of power. There's so much to consider. The game has, and you only get 2 actions on your turn, and you're either like discarding tiles to take new ones, or you're placing a tile, or placing a leader, or moving a leader somewhere. You can connect kingdoms, but if you place that tile, then it's not actually working towards scoring. You can convert tiles into these monuments to get auto points at the end of every turn, but as a result, your leaders are now weaker on the board because they're not connected to as many tiles that are colors. So many trade-offs, just like a mind-blowing decision space. And one of the games that of any game I've played, I think this has one of the highest skill ceilings in terms of, like, I think you could play this like 500 times and still feel like there's room to grow and to become a master of this game. One that I really need to get again, cabin, absolutely. My physical copy will be coming with us. And this is one that if you had asked me even like 2 weeks ago, this probably would have been in the 30 to 20 range. But I've had some games going on BGA lately where I feel like I've kind of unlocked this new level of understanding with it. Shout out to Shodden, Cookie, and Dr. Spaceman, or Spaceman, I guess that's probably a reference to, what is it, Brooklyn Nine-Nine or whatever. I will just keep auto-proposing rematches with you guys for eternity in this game, as long as you want to keep playing it with me.
So you're saying you won like 4 or 5 games in a row? You're like, I'm going to move this up the list.
No, I think just kidding. I think I've only won this game once or twice of the probably 20-ish times that I've played it, and that's a common theme with a lot of my favorite games. Or when I keep losing, I want to keep coming back and figuring out what it is that I'm missing or how to improve at this game. So, love this game.
And I think something we haven't even mentioned across talking about it twice now. I think one of the best parts of this is the way that you score. Right, your lowest color is your final score. Like, you're not scoring for all these different things combined. It is just literally the lowest amount that you have in a particular color. That is your score. So you really it's forcing everyone to spread out where they're scoring.
Yeah, you can't just ride that gravy train. You got to do something else to get points elsewhere.
It's unbelievable.
Fine, I'll play it again. Not looking forward to it. Those are our 20 to 11 picks, which means that all that's left is in 2 days' time, 10 to 1, our top 10 board games of all time, 30 games across us, all in one video for the first time. This is your last chance to put predictions in the comments if you want to try to predict and get clout for guessing our top 10. If anybody can guess the exact positioning of my 10, Braiden's 10, and Carlo's 10 in the comments, I will personally send you $200. But you have to, but you have to guess it exact across all three people, and you have to get it every single spot right. And the date you can't post this after that video goes up and say, oh my God, I'm watching the dates on this. I know this is super hard to do, but I'm also putting up $200, and you know, mortgage is really expensive these days. So feel free to put your comments in there.
Obviously, we're excluded from this, right?
Yeah, this is Dylan's personal 200. No, I'll match that. If you can guess all three of them.
I meant in terms of like predicting it, like putting our we.
Oh no, I'm not sending. If you get them right, I'll give you a nice high five. That's it.
Because I'll know it before this video goes.
Yeah, right. Last chance. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in 2 days' time. See you next time.